So let's talk about a pretty controversial theory in the Hunter x Hunter community, and that is how Gon and Killua could make a comeback on the Dark Continent. Now, it depends on who you talk to. If you're talking to like a hardcore Hunter x Hunter out, they're probably going to incredulously laugh in your face, at least, digitally. But with all the setup we've gotten for the unexplored areas and the dangers lurking there, we have to be getting there after the current arc. Unless Togashi decides to subvert our expectations by being a massive troll and no one makes it there except Beyond. Either way, seeing as we're fast approaching the mysterious and deadly place, it's about time we look at what could be waiting for us on this voyage, as well as the possibility of two of our favorite characters finally returning. So first, let's get into the Dark Continent itself and the beings that inhabit it, or at least the known ones. But also, here's the thing about the Dark Continent. It's considered separate from the known Hunter x Hunter world. And because of that, people migrated from there to live in a more peaceful and stable environment. And because of that, it's said to cause disasters whenever people decide to travel back to the Dark Continent, since they end up bringing back terrible things almost every time. So far, there's a calculated 0.04% survival rate based on the 149 trips that have been made there. And none would have been possible without the guide, a being summoned from the Gatekeeper. There's only been 5 expeditions with survivors who returned to the known world. It's almost like deciding to climb Mount Everest or down a volcano, with little to no experience and hoping you don't die. Also, shout out to all the Sherpas out there. If you're a Sherpa who watches my videos, let me know in the comments. But anyway, the main issue isn't the terrain or environment though, it's the entities that live there, often referred to as the 5 Great Calamities. These 5 types of creatures, or entities, were acquired on 5 separate trips, starting with Zobei, also called the Immortality Disease. This was contracted by Kukan Yu Kingdom's people who ventured there 50 years ago. It went well at first with Beyond as their companion, which, also gives us a hint to his age. The team even collected the alchemy-related plant Metallion as planned. But on the way back, everything went wrong. They got lost, most of them died, and one hunter returned with the illness. Plus, the plant withered and died as well. All that they have to show for it is that former hunter with the illness, not requiring anything to live, but no longer human either. Next, there's the twin-tailed snake named Hellbell. Whoever it bites becomes overcome with the urge to kill others. The Federation of Ochima's team went there in search of Nitro Rice, which holds the secret to longevity, with only 11 people returning empty-handed. That's a 99% mortality rate, and they hadn't even reached the swamp where the plant grew. I'm assuming it turned into a battle royale and they probably started slaughtering each other. Following that is the human-keeping beast Pack, which has caused victims in the known world that are currently being kept secret. The only reason the Bedros Union explored its area was to get the unmanned rock from there, which can create a huge amount of electricity from a small amount of it. Of the 1,000 people who went, only 7 returned. As far as we know, it can manipulate human minds with what looks like an antenna and feeds off of them or keeps them as pets. The ones that are pets are shrunken to the size of dolls. Moving on to the gaseous creature Ai, or at least that's how I think you pronounce it. I don't know, it's AI. It's a desire-driven, codependent entity that has created victims both on the continent and in the known world. The Mimbo Republic's team went to get the mother solution for all liquids, aka the Trinity Elixir, only for 3 people to return with nothing, not even their sanity. And that was with the help of the Hunter Association. It's said to wring out its victims' bodies, which should sound familiar, and we'll get into that, don't worry. Lastly, the one I consider most deadly is the botanical weapon called Bryon, or Bryon. I don't know. This humanoid plant protects ancient ruins in a labyrinth city. And that's where the herb that can cure all illnesses lies too. The United States of Saherta went there for it, and only 2 survived their encounter with Bryon. Keep in mind, it's considered a species and not a singular being, meaning there's at least one other Bryon. There's also the possibility that the Chimera ants were from the Dark Continent, as mentioned by Jing. But the queen could have just come from outside the known world, near the new continent. and not as far as the Dark Continent's deadly environment. Regardless, the ants are used for measuring the other calamities' level of danger. But let's go more into the people who have actually been there. So as I said before, Beyond, the son of Netero, went to the Dark Continent 50 years ago, and his trio is what encouraged Netero to ban travel there altogether, after seeing the devastating effect Zobe had. But before doing that, he had gone with Zig Zoldyck and Lyn on an unrecorded trip. He had hoped his tales of what was there and the dangers that were lurking would discourage people, but it only encouraged strong Nen users like Beyond to go even more. Currently, Lyn is the oldest recorded survivor due to Netero's death against Meruem, though that was more his choice rather than Meruem finishing him off. Also, we know many other nations and hunters have ventured there with varying levels of success, like the one who contracted the immortality disease and eats his own flesh now. But there's one character that many people theorize is related to the Dark Continent, and that's Alluka. There's a major possibility that Nanika is one of the Eye entities, seeing as the victims were described as wrung-out humans, with witness accounts of it happening on the known world as well. I wonder if they're aware of the wishes that Alluka and Nanika granted, and those victims too. Would the Zoldyck family even report that? Anyway, everything points to Nanika being brought back accidentally on an unrecorded trip, and possibly another reason as to why Netero banned all future trips when he returned with Zig. But there's also debate that Netero would never allow that in the first place, which wouldn't be a choice if the guide sent it back as punishment, as Jing suggested. Either way, it leads to the same conclusion. Nanika's actually an Eye creature and arrived not by force, but by coincidence. Also, isn't it interesting that Nanika always responds to Killua with I when it means to say yes? It's like a shortened version of hi, almost as if it was named after the sound it makes. Though I also means love in Japanese, and it forms parasitic bonds with the host. Not to mention, Nanika attacks the bonds of people who refuse the requests. Would this explain why Killua's dad refused to consider Alluka a part of the family? Because she's being possessed by an Eye entity? But also something of note, the trip occurred decades ago, which would mean that Alluka's too young to be possessed by Eye, which would mean that Alluka's too young to be possessed by the Eye that was brought back, right? Well, some people believe that it was dormant in the Zoldyck family, which is made more plausible by Zig's whereabouts being unknown. Perhaps it's attached to him originally and jumped to Alluka after her birth, finding her to be a better match to live within. I'd even argue that Zig probably fought to keep it out and severed the tie. Lastly, Don Freaks, or Frex, I don't know, deserves a mention as an explorer from 300 years ago. An ambitious man who wanted to explore the entire Mobius shoreline on his own. There are 2 books written by him, with only the East having been recorded. As Jing suggests, it's possible Don is still alive, thanks to the many mysteries of the Dark Continent, and continuously writing his book on the West. And considering that Jing believes that the guide curses people by making them bring back things from the Dark Continent, well, if Don is still there, he should be fine. He might have to mail back the book though. But now let's get into the current voyage on the Black Whale headed to the Dark Continent, as well as Beyond's objective. So, after Steiner, a member of the IPA, is tasked with making the trip to the continent as safe as possible, he has no choice but to manipulate the information and the destination to keep civilian casualties down. On the other hand, Beyond intends to be the first to find everything on the Dark Continent, so he'll be leading the Kaken members there himself. Basically, he wants to quench his thirst for adventure and challenges, so it's more than likely that Beyond's taking an untraveled route instead, which could lead to another entity being discovered, a 6th calamity to try and survive. But there's more to it, because why else would he have so many sleeper agents ready to take out the princes during the succession contest if he didn't mean to overthrow them? Plus, there's one mystery child, possibly, that could become the next ruler. Though that doesn't seem like Beyond's true intention based on Long Key's view of her father. I wonder if Beyond would purposely lead the Kaken Empire towards their doom on the Dark Continent to take their power in a less obvious way. And let's not forget that he's suddenly asked to see someone after spending almost 2 weeks just chilling and reading books. Whether that person is his secret child prince or an ally hidden on the ship, we still don't know. It could be a contact in the Kaken Empire who wants to help Beyond in his deadly plan. But anyway, let's get into what I was talking about in the beginning of the video, and that's how Gon and Killua could possibly return, or not, ? And also how it relates to the Black Whale with Kurapika, Melody, and Leorio already on the ship towards the Dark Continent. It's almost as if we're back in the York New arc. And let's not forget that Hisoka and the troop members are gathered as well. But more importantly, the Hunter Association is going, through Nove and Moral specifically, to create a quick way for skilled people to go from the known world to the Dark Continent, possibly to escape without contracting illnesses or being killed by calamities. But I'd argue that Jing is probably right about the guide forcing curses on them. So having a base there helps to ensure that they have a safe spot to return to, without risking the lives of people in the known world. But what does this have to do with Gon and Killua? Well, their arcs seem finished in many ways, but it doesn't mean that they don't have more growing to do, and especially doesn't mean that they don't want to reunite with their pals. Gon even admitted that he sees his dad more as an uncle that he'd love to go on adventures with if he had his Nen back. Many people argue that it's too dangerous for them, seeing as all the threats are above that of the Chimera ants. But what if it's also a way for Gon to get his Nen back from the cure-all herb there? He could wait on the new continent in relative safety until the hunters return with supplies. Jing even asked Gon if he'd want to go with him there, meaning he trusts that he could survive the Dark Continent with his original skill set. However, on the other hand, it's obvious many of the characters currently involved have parts of their life related to the Dark Continent. So wouldn't that also help to confirm that Nanika is an eye? If Killua decided to travel with Alluka there, I'm sure they both hate her being treated as an outsider. But anyway, there's also still the chance that Gon reacquires his Nen quickly and on his own, so joining in the next arc would be possible, right? Regardless of what everyone believes, it's unlikely they return until the Black Whale arrives at the new continent. There's no point for them to be in this crazy warlike situation going on between the succession contest and the Mafia families. But let me know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments, guys. Do you think that Gon and Killua will return in the quote-unquote Dark Continent Expedition arc? Let me know, and if you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.